What would you do if an object revealed secrets about your past or family that changed everything you believed? The room was thick with the stale scent of damp wool and cheap coffee, the pale gray light from the overcast sky filtering weakly through the tall, narrow windows. Lena sat curled into a wooden chair at the back of the cramped community center room, a worn notebook resting forgotten on her lap. Her fingers twined nervously in the folds of her faded cardigan, the fabric soft but threadbare at the seams, much like her confidence. The murmurs of other local writers buzzed softly around her, but all seemed distant, as if she were submerged beneath water, struggling to break through. At the front of the room stood Jordan, his voice sharp, cutting through the fog of anticipation. His dark eyes gleamed with a predatory hunger as he held the circle's attention and, more pointedly, focused it squarely on her. "Lena's story," he said with a smirk, "reminded me of a tale I've read before, an uninspired retelling lacking fresh breath or novelty. Frankly, it's uninspiring." His words fell like stones, cold and heavy, sinking into her. Small, skeptical chuckles rippled from a few in the audience, a wave of silent judgment that rolled over Lena like an icy tide. The walls seemed to close in, the fluorescent lights flickered, casting stuttering shadows that made the faces around her appear distantly hostile. Her heart pounded fiercely, trapped behind a cage of rising shame. The warmth drained from her cheeks, replaced by a flush of humiliation so raw it threatened to consume her entirely. She met Jordan's gaze, searching for compassion but finding only his glinting triumph. I wanted to capture the quiet moments," she murmured, her voice barely audible, tremulous and cracked. "The things that stay between us." Jordan shook his head, dismissive. "That's your problem, you hide behind vagueness, afraid of taking risks. Art demands boldness, Lena, not vague nostalgia." The sharpness of his rebuke echoed in the still room, a verdict passed under the harsh glow of unyielding scrutiny. Lena's fingers curled tighter around the notebook, knuckles white, the edges of the pages crumpling beneath her grasp. Outside, a gust of wind slammed the door briefly, and the murmur of the sea crashing against rocky cliffs filtered faintly through the cracks, a distant reminder of the vastness beyond her confined world. The clock on the wall ticked unevenly, each minute stretched taut with suspended hope and sharp despair. Her gaze fell to the worn notebook again, fingers trembling. She could almost hear the whispered stories trapped inside, waiting for a chance to breathe and bloom. The locket around her neck, hidden beneath her sweater, lay heavy, a cold, weighty reminder of legacy and mystery, a silent call from a past she had yet to touch. The camera lingered on Lena's face, the quiet strength orbiting beneath the surface of her chemise, gentle wilderness of auburn curls catching the soft, gray light. A pause filled the room, deep and pregnant, an unspoken question hanging in the thickening air. And then the scene closed, not with resolution but with the flicker of a shadowed lighthouse on the distant shore, its beam cutting through the mist, a beacon of guidance and isolation, promising both danger and revelation. The last frame held on Lena's trembling hand, reaching beneath her cardigan, fingers brushing the cool metal of the locket, before fading into the muted palette of twilight and ocean whispers. The evening breeze swept in sharp and salty down the coastal path, carrying with it a chill that seeped through the thin layers of Lena's vintage cardigan. She moved slowly along the damp sands, the crushed shells crunching beneath her worn canvas shoes. Overhead, the sky dimmed into a watercolor of muted blues and grays, the sun dipping toward the restless ocean horizon. Her fingers brushed absent-mindedly against her locket hidden beneath her shirt, the cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of her skein, a reminder of the vulnerability she tried tirelessly to mask. The crowds had thinned, the echoes of Jordan's harsh critique still lingering in the subtle creases of her mind. Yet here, isolated amidst the rhythmic crashing of waves and the occasional call of distant gulls, the sharpness of humiliation dulled into a deep, gnawing ache. She closed her eyes, breathing in the briny air, allowing herself a moment to simply exist in the quiet apart from judgment. When her gaze reopened, it was caught by a flicker of something half buried in the sand just ahead. Kneeling, she reached forward, the cold grain sifting through her fingers as she uncovered a tarnished silver locket, its chain tangled around smooth stones eroded by time. The engraving was faint but unmistakably a delicate eye, watching and waiting. A shiver of recognition, distant yet intimate, rippled through her, a whispered thread connecting past to present, veiled in mystery. Clara's heart quickened, each pulse a quiet defiance rising from the depths of her uncertainty. She turned the locket over slowly, a small compartment seeming to tease beneath its clasp. Hesitation modulated her breath. Was this an artifact of chance or a beacon calling her into the shadows of her lineage? Silence gathered around her, heavy and poignant, punctuated only by the relentless pulse of the tide against the shore. The world seemed to hold its breath as woman and object merged in a moment suspended between fear and curiosity. A distant voice, carried by the wind yet clear to her alone, seemed to murmur her name, a spectral invitation to unravel the secrets long concealed by salt and shadow. Lena stood, the locket now warm in her palm, the weight of its legacy settling like an unspoken pact. Though the pain of rejection pressed taut beneath her ribs, a spark glimmered, faint but undeterred. The lighthouse, far on the rocky precipice, stood steadfast against the encroaching dark, its beam slicing through the gathering night, a symbol of endurance and isolation entwined. With a deep exhale, Lena tucked the locket safely beneath her cardigan and strode toward the faint light of the distant town. Each step echoed resolve, quiet and steady, threading through the muted palette of ocean mist and twilight blues. The camera pulled back, revealing the vast expanse of the sea meeting the dim horizon as the first stars blinked against the cavernous sky, a vastness reflecting the uncharted journey quietly unfolding within her. The scene settled on the steadfast beacon of the lighthouse, its light a solitary spoke of clarity piercing the gathering shadows as Lena faded into the night, her path forever altered by the whisper of a secret long concealed. The gray light of a waning afternoon filtered through the brittle clouds, casting a soft, diffused glow over the jagged shoreline. Lena stood motionless where the wind-whipped dunes met the restless sea, gripping the cold, tarnished locket she had uncovered buried deep beneath the seabed's scattered driftwood and glistening stones. The salt air tasted sharp, filled with the bittersweet echoes of forgotten years. With a trembling hand, she brushed the sand away from the intricate clasp, fingers tracing the delicate engraving of an eye that seemed to pierce through the salt-brushed metal, an emblem of watchfulness, of secrets writhing just beneath the surface. Her breath caught as she discovered a hidden hinge, barely perceptible beneath layers of grit and rust. A quiet mechanical click broke the relentless susurration of the waves, and the locket creaked open, revealing a tiny compartment nestled within. Inside lay a folded sheet of aged paper, brittle and yellowed, its edges frayed like the tattered sails of a long-forgotten ship. Unfolding it carefully, Lena was met with tightly penned words, fearful, urgent, and unfinished. Each letter, each carefully penned curve, resonated with a familiarity that tugged at the deepest fibers of her being. Her eyes narrowed, the weight of unspoken legacies threading through the script before her. The distant call of the ocean mingled with the whisper of breeze brushing cold kisses over her skin, as if nature itself conspired to amplify the unspoken gravity of what she now held. She swallowed hard, the sting of salt in the air mingling with the sudden swell of resolve rising within the quiet strength orbiting beneath her earlier humiliation, now kindling a resolute spark of awakening. The lighthouse in the distance stood sentinel, its beam carving arcs of light through the gathering dusk, a solitary guardian watching over the narrative that was now steering her own fate. The isolation embodied by its cold stone walls mirrored her own solitude, yet promised guidance through the encroaching shadows. Lena's fingers tightened around the letter, the fragile paper almost bursting with the urgency of stories waiting to be heard, truths clawing free from silence. Her gaze lifted toward the horizon where the lighthouse's shaft collided with the storm-darkened sky, a vivid contrast to the muted grays enveloping her, promising both danger and salvation. A distant, haunting voice seemed to sigh with the wind, barely audible but unmistakable, "I'm still here." The soft articulation reverberated through her bones. The locket's inscription transformed from mere words to an echo across generations. Her heart thundered not with fear, but with a growing awareness, the first tremors of transformation rippling outward from the depths of her doubt. The camera pulled back slowly, framing Lena's figure cloaked in windblown hair and twilight, standing at the crossroads of past and future, burden and liberation. The scene faded gently, lingering on the locket cradled in her hands, its ancient eye glistening quietly as the tides of revelation began to flood her world, intuitively unfolding toward a new, uncertain dawn. The coastal wind whipped fiercely, carrying the chill of the ocean spray as Lena tread the narrow, winding footpath toward the town's oldest relic, the lighthouse perched dramatically against the restless sea. Above, storm clouds wrestled with fading shafts of muted sunlight, casting a melancholic palette of grays and blues over the rocky cliffs. The rhythmic crash of waves echoed like distant drumbeats, amplifying the weight of the mystery she now carried. In her hand, the locket felt heavy, a strange talisman pulsating softly against her palm. The old, folded letter she had liberated from its hidden compartment seemed to burn with secrets eager to be revealed. Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying the tumult beneath her composed exterior. The town itself appeared subdued beneath the brooding sky. Familiar streets were layered with fallen leaves whose rustle underfoot was swallowed by the omnipresent sea breeze. Lena's vintage clothes fluttered against her frame, echoing her nostalgic yet restless spirit, one caught between yearning and fear. She paused before the ornate, weather-beaten door of the lighthouse, its paint flaking like dried ocean salt, and cast her gaze upward. The great beacon atop rotated slowly, a steadfast sentinel casting erratic streaks of light through the gathering gloom, a symbol of both guidance and isolation. Determined, Lena stepped inside, the air cooler, redolent of salt, old wood, and untold stories lingering in the shadows. The spiraling staircase creaked beneath her ascent, each footstep a measured note in a somber symphony. The muted colors inside were enveloped in the soft glow of lantern light, mingling shadows and past echoes. In the quiet solitude, she carefully unfolded the letter. The handwriting was delicate but firm, each word steeped in passion and pain, words that seemed to stretch across time, connecting her to someone she could barely comprehend but felt tethered to irrevocably. Her voice broke the hush as she spoke softly. "Who are you? And why did you never send this?" A wave of emotion swelled within Hera, mingling of sorrow, curiosity, and an embryonic spark of courage. She rubbed the locket thoughtfully, its cold metal grounding her as questions multiplied. Her resolve hardened, but not without the sting of vulnerability. The mysterious letter was more than a relic. It was a challenge to unearth buried truths and reclaim a story that was both hers and yet obscured by time. Just as she pocketed the letter, a sudden gust swept through the lighthouse, rattling panes and stirring the tattered curtains. Lena's heart fluttered with apprehension as a faint whisper murmured, almost imperceptibly, "Find me." Her eyes widened. The moment hung suspended, a junction between doubt and determination, mystery and revelation. The camera pulled away slowly, framing the lighthouse amid the wild coastal landscape. Lena, a solitary figure bathed in the interplay of shadow and light, stood poised on the edge of discovery, her journey irrevocably set in motion. The screen held on the darkening horizon where the sea met storm-laden sky, the lighthouse beacon spinning defiantly as the fading sunlight whispered of secrets waiting just beyond reach. The sky over the coastal town had darkened since the afternoon, now swollen with thick clouds that churned like dark smoke over the restless sea. Lena's boots pressed firmly into the damp earth as she walked the edge of the rocky bluff, the sharp wind whipping strands of her curly auburn hair across her face. The locket nestled against her chest felt heavier today, as if the letter concealed within weighed not just with age, but with the burdens of untold histories. Behind her, the town's narrow streets glistened with the sheen of a recent drizzle. Old houses leaned into the fog, their windows yawning hollow like watchful eyes. The lighthouse stood distant yet dominant, its beacon extinguished beneath the threatening sky, a sentinel waiting for dawn or disaster. Her mind churned with fragments of discoveries, old letters matching the Locket's handwriting, whispered town legends weaving into a tapestry of mystery, and Jordan's sneering dismissal echoing in her ears still, sharper and more venomous with each encounter. The rival writer had become more than a mere adversary. With each public barbed comment and underhanded jab, he threatened to unravel not just her confidence, but the fragile threads of truth she was desperate to expose. Returning to the seafront cafe where she and Jordan often crossed paths, Lena slipped into the warm refuge with hesitance. The amber glow of hanging lamps softened edges, but her presence stirred cold currents beneath the surface. Jordan's eyes pinned her from across the room, calculating and ever watchful. Words hung in the air between them, unspoken and heavy. When he finally approached, the smirk on his lips did not reach his eyes. "Looking for more inspiration, Lena? Or just more excuses?" His voice was low, insidious, meant to unnerve and provoke. She steadied herself, not backing away. "The past holds stories you wouldn't understand," she said quietly, the hint of steel woven through her measured calm. He laughed, a sound like breaking ice. "Funny, I have something that might change your tune." He pulled from his coat a locket identical to hers, the same etched eye glimmering ominously in the dim light. The surge of shock and fear shot through Lena's veins like lightning. "Where did you get that? Let's just say, family secrets run deeper than you think." His grin was triumphant, yet his eyes flickered with a shadow of something unspoken, a warning or a challenge. Their close friend, Mara, watched from a distance, her expression torn. Later that evening, Lena's phone buzzed with a curt message from Mara: "Be careful. Not everyone is who they seem." A knot of betrayal tangled in Lena's chest. The web was tightening, alliances shifting like sands. Doubt pricked at her resolve, but beneath it flickered a stubborn flame of determination. Alone that night, Lena sat before the lighthouse, its silhouette black against the turbulent sea. She unfolded the letter again, the ink still legible despite time's attempt to erase its words. The connection to her lineage was more than whispered folklore. It was a living thread pulling her forward. Her breath, caught as a sudden whisper, barely audible over the crashing waves, seemed to call her Nemean ethereal voice carrying promise and warning. The camera closed in on Lena's face, her eyes reflecting the tempestuous ocean and the faint glow of the locket, now truly a beacon. The scene faded with the lighthouse beam cutting a graceful arc into the thick night mist, the symbol of both looming isolation and the fragile hope illuminating the path ahead. The night was falling hard over the coastal town, draping everything in a thick cloak of damp fog and low, restless wind. Lena stood at the edge of the weathered cliffs, the turbulent sea churning far below. The locket's cold weight pressed into her palm as she unfolded the fragile letter again, each word like a thread pulling at a tapestry of long-buried secrets. Her fingers trembled, tracing the faded script that bore the signature of a name she recognized all too well, her own. The letter's contents were a haunting mixture of love, regret, and betrayal, a confession written decades before, hidden away and never sent. The truths within shifted the very ground beneath her feet, unraveling the identity she had clung to with desperate fists. Below, the lighthouse stood silhouetted against the storm-darkened sky, its beacon extinguished, symbolizing a guidance lost, a lineage broken. The weight of silence seemed to gather around her, thickening with the gravity of revelations that felt both like an awakening and a wound. A sudden chill swept over her, carrying a whisper she could not place, a voice neither wholly past nor present that seemed threaded with longing and warning. The locket's eye glimmered faintly, a haunting emblem of watchfulness and concealed truths. Memories flooded back, fragments of childhood, the faded portraits in her family home, the words unsaid that had shaped the shadows of her soul. Her breath caught as she realized the extent of what had been hidden, not just family secrets but the very essence of her narrative, written and guarded by silent ancestors. The sea crashed relentlessly against the cliffs, mirroring the tumult within her, storm of discovery and loss that left her breathless and gasping for hold. Her heart ached as she clutched the letter, the fragile paper now imbued with a fierce poignancy. Her voice was barely a breath. I've been living a borrowed story. But now, I must write my own. The horizon trembled under the tempestuous sky, lightning flashing like the fraying edges of a world unraveling. The scene lingered on Lena's resolute figure, a woman shaped by pain and revelation, standing at the precipice of truth and transformation. Her silhouette, framed by the fading light and the steadfast lighthouse, embodied the painful beauty of awakening, the fragile emergence of a narrative reclaimed. The screen slowly faded to black, the haunting echo of wind and waves, an ode to secrets surfaced and the journey still to come. The relentless drizzle that had haunted the town all day morphed into a cold, unforgiving rain that rattled against the cracked windowpanes of Lena's small apartment. Shadows stretched long across the worn wooden floor as the dim light flickered uncertainly from a lone candle. The darkness seeped through every crack and corner, wrapping around her like the heavy quilt of doubt and isolation tightening its grip. Lena sat, slumped against the peeling wallpaper, the old letters and notes scattered haphazardly around her, the scattered remnants of discoveries now weighed down by betrayal. The locket, once a talisman of distant hope, lay forgotten on the small wooden table, its metal dulled, its hidden compartment empty in her outstretched palm. Her breath came fragile and uneven, every inhale a sharp reminder of the unraveling she could no longer deny. In the city cafe where they'd once exchanged words steeped in cautious respect, Jordan's grin had turned venomous. His sabotage was cruel and public leaked tales not meant for others' ears, twisting her vulnerabilities for his gain. Her phone buzzed incessantly, notifications lighting its cold screen, friends, strangers, messages that blurred into a cacophony of judgment and whispered rumors. The voices she once heard softly encouraging her now became cruel echoes ripping through her mind, amplifying every doubt. Outside, the ocean roared its fury, waves battering the jagged cliffs with relentless aggression, a chaotic mirror to the storm ravaging her spirit. The lighthouse cast its sweeping beam against the murky sky but never quite reached the safety she longed for. Time lost meaning here. The clocks in her apartment had all stopped their rhythmic passage, their hands frozen mid-tick like her world suspended in a perpetual nightmare. Minutes bleeding endlessly into despair. Her fingers trembled as she reached out, touching the frayed edges of the old letters, the ink smeared from years but still telling stories of love, loss, and secrets too heavy to bear. The fragile script seemed to mock her with unreadable riddles that danced just beyond understanding. Her solitude was oppressive, the walls closing in, pressing her into a shrinking abyss. Every sound became an intrusion, every silence a chasm deepening. A whispered name, barely audible, caressed her ears, whether real or phantom she could not tell, calling her into darkness or awakening, a cruel ambivalence. Her haunted eyes, bright yet hollow, flicked toward the window, where the storm's fury briefly illuminated the distant silhouette of the lighthouse, an eternal guardian of secrets, both beacon and prison. Silent tears carved cold trails down her pale cheeks. The air grew heavier, the room colder. Her fight dwindled as shadows suffocated hope, her voice lost in the suffocating quiet. The candle guttered and died, plunging her into darkness as the scene faded with the relentless pulse of the rain, a merciless cadence marking a heartbreaking, a descent into an uncertain abyss. The cold wind swept mercilessly through the empty streets of the small coastal town, carrying with it the sharp tang of salt and decay. Lena sat on the worn wooden bench near the lighthouse's base, the relentless crashing of waves a mournful lullaby to her unraveling spirit. Her fingers idly traced the faded embroidery on her cardigan sleeve, the texture rough and unsatisfying beneath her trembling touch. The warm hues of the fading day succumbed to the deep indigo and shadow, swallowing the last fragile light. Her breath came shallow, mingling with the chilly air in faint, fleeting puffs that quickly dissipated. Each exhalation was a silent surrender to the gnawing emptiness that had settled deep within, a cavern carved from the ruins of dreams and trust. Her auburn curls, once a crown of quiet strength, now tumbled wild, a tangled testimony to nights filled with restless torment. The weight of loneliness pressed on her chest like the stone steps of the lighthouse, cold and unyielding. Her eyes, swollen from forgotten tears, fixated on the steady beam sweeping overhead, an indifferent sentinel whose light cut through fog but offered no solace. The lighthouse embodied her duality, guiding yet isolating, a beacon surrounded by the vast, unending abyss. In the distance, footsteps echoed hollow and slow, receding into the night. The silence that followed was thicker, heavier, a suffocating void where even hope seemed to falter. Lena's lips moved, whispering a fractured plea swallowed immediately by the ocean's roar. Why? The familiar locket, once a symbol of connection and mystery, lay cold and forgotten in the sand beside her. A single strand of chain coiled loosely like a serpent, its clasp broken, a stark emblem of fractured bonds and lost histories. As the wind tugged at her clothes, the relentless waves crashed again, erasing footprints, dissolving traces of presence as if her existence itself was being washed away. The eternal horizon stretched empty and merciless, a swallowing maw of possibility extinguished. Time in this realm had stilled. The lighthouse clock, far above, ceased its ticking hours ago, frozen at a moment when light and shadow became one. Each heartbeat echoed with the unbearable void of suspended fate. Her eyes closed, tears slipping silently down, mingling with the cold salt air on her cheeks. Voice barely a breath, she confessed to the night, "I don't know if I can fight anymore." The camera panned out slowly, framing Lena's small figure dwarfed by the towering monolith of the lighthouse and the endless, dark sea beyond. Her silhouette blurred, swallowed by the receptive shadows. The scene faded gracefully into silence and darkness, leaving only the unresolved echo of a lighthouse beam cutting the night, a fragile streak of light in an ocean of loss. The heavy fog rolled stealthily over the coastal cliffs, blurring the horizon where the sea met sky in an endless expanse of muted gray. Lena sat motionless on the cold stone steps beneath the lighthouse, her figure cloaked in the same weighty cardigan that had become a second skin. Her hands trembled as they cradled the fragile, worn letter she'd found days before, its edges yellowed, corners curled with care and neglect. The overwhelming silence of the town seemed to seep into her bones, pressing down with a weight that stole her breath and numbed her spirit. Each crash of the distant waves echoed the turmoil within, a relentless rhythm reverberating through the hollows of her heart. Wet strands of her curly auburn hair clung stubbornly to her pallid skin, her eyes glassy with unshed tears that mirrored the dark sea reflecting the overcast sky. The locket, the cold metal resting against her palm, felt heavy with the secrets it concealed, the untold stories embedded in its secret compartment, now a bittersweet echo of the frailty and endurance baked into her lineage. Her whispered breath broke the oppressive quiet, "I'm lost." Yet beneath the veil of despair, a faint stirring began, a fragile pulse of light barely perceptible in the vast cavern of shadow. Her gaze drifted away from the letter to the lighthouse towering above, its ancient walls bathed in the soft glow of the flickering beacon. The light, though diminished by the storm's weight, still pulsed with resolute rhythm, a stubborn guardian against the consuming night. A sudden memory washed over her. The taste of salt on the breeze during childhood summers, the comforting weight of her mother's hand, a voice reminding her she was never truly alone. The rustle of pages from the book she'd discovered intertwined with the winds whispering through the coastal grass. Slowly, Lena's fingers tightened around the locket, her breath steadying as if the past itself was reaching through the years, offering a slender branch to grasp. Her voice, barely more than a tremulous whisper, carried fierce determination. "I will find the truth no matter the cost." The camera held on her silhouette framed against the storm-darkened sea, the lighthouse beacon sweeping over the restless waves, as the fragile promise of renewal threaded through the night's embrace. The air throbbed with unsaid words and unbroken threads, a quiet oath poised at the cusp of dawn. Lena rose slowly, carrying the weight of fragile hope as her footsteps traced the ancient stones that whispered of stories yet to be told. The scene faded to black, the lingering echo of the lighthouse's light a beacon of enduring strength casting a solitary glow in the enveloping darkness. The dawn broke softly over the small coastal town, casting a warm, amber glow that seeped through the cracks of the weathered lighthouse windows. Lena stood at the base of the tower, her silhouette etched against the expanding light, clutching a worn, leather-bound journal, the pages yellowed and delicate, yet alive with the pulse of stories waiting to be unearthed. The salty breeze tugged at her curly auburn hair, now tousled from the night's restless sleep, as she gazed upward. The lighthouse, once a symbol of lonely guidance, now shimmered with the promise of renewal. Her eyes, bruised yet resilient, lingered on the distant horizon where the ocean met the awakening sky. Somewhere within, a faint spark flickered, a whisper of hope she had almost surrendered. The heavy shadows that cloaked her days had begun to lift, replaced by a fragile light that beckoned her forward. With tentative steps, Lena moved toward the weathered wooden door, its paint peeling like layers of her past doubts. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and old secrets, yet beneath it all, a new sense of purpose emerged, a quiet resolve to stand in the truth, however trembling her voice. Inside, the lighthouse's spiraling staircase beckoned, its wooden steps creaking softly beneath her cautious ascent, each one resonating with the heartbeat of her awakening. The walls bore silent witness to centuries of stories, echoes of voices once lost to time now whispering the possibility that her own voice could carve a new legacy. Reaching the balcony, Lena paused, breath-catching as she looked out over the vast ocean, the rising sun igniting the horizon in brilliant splashes of pink and gold. Her fingers brushed the cool metal of the locket tucked beneath her coat, a relic of past generations, its weight a reminder of the lineage she was finally starting to claim. She opened her palm to reveal a folded, fragile letter, the ink faded but fiercely alive with unspoken truths. Her eyes shimmered with the first tears of acceptance, and silently, she traced the worn edges of the paper. The stormy doubts and torment of her previous life seemed to momentarily dissolve into the dawn's embrace. A gust of wind, gentle yet insistent, swept across the balcony, lifting her hair and carrying with it the faintest echo of a voice almost inaudible but undeniably present. The past is not gone. Her heart fluttered, an uncertain yet undeniable signal that her struggle, her pain, and her hope were all part of a longer story still unfolding. She clutched the letter closer, a fragile yet fierce determination settling within her. The lighthouse shone defiantly into the rising day, a silent witness to the first steps of her transformation. As she stepped back, the camera slowly pulled away, framing her figure against the glowing horizon, a symbol of quiet resilience and the unbreakable human spirit willing to seek the light amid darkness. The scene lingered, capturing the delicate yet powerful moment of awakening hope flickering softly on the edge of the vast, open sea. The morning fog was retreating, revealing a horizon tinged with the first warm hues of dawn, casting long beams of amber across the town square. Lena stood before the lighthouse, her silhouette resolute against the awakening sky. Clutching the aged, yet vibrantly inscribed letter, her ancestors' confession, the weight of betrayal and revelation transformed into a renewed sense of purpose. The damp stones beneath her feet carried the echoes of her journey, the whispering voices of doubts and fears now softened by conviction. Her hands trembled, not with weakness but with a quiet, fierce courage as she carefully laid the letter atop the weathered pedestal of the lighthouse's base. Her eyes, steady and unflinching, reflected a landscape both broken and healing. The lighthouse's beam, once a symbol of lonely vigilance, now flickered in harmony with her rising resolve. Its light sliced through the mist like a sword, a protector of truth and a herald of reconciliation. She looked upward, where the once guarded lantern now shimmered gold, a testament to the trust she'd reclaimed. The wind carried the scent of salt and renewal, a gentle gale that lifted her auburn curls and seemed to whisper, "Your story is yours alone now." She stepped back, her gaze sweeping over the town, a place she'd nearly forsaken but now saw through eyes unclouded by shadows. In her heart, a new narrative was beginning, the one where vulnerability was strength, and silence could be broken into harmony. Her fingertips brushed the locket around her neck, a relic of the past, transformed into a symbol of her future. The ocean in the distance shimmered in the rising light, an endless mirror of both history and hope. Behind her, the lighthouse's shadow receded, replaced by the luminous promise of dawn. Lena's resolve was a bright ember in the sprawling sky, a beacon for her lineage and her own healing. She turned slowly, each movement deliberating in spoken vow that her journey was only beginning. The camera pulled back, revealing Lena standing tall amidst the expansive landscape, the lighthouse glowing softly behind Hera, monument to resilience and truth. Her figure became one with the awakening dawn, a living testament that even in despair, hope could forge a new legacy, the kind worth fighting for, quietly, fiercely, eternally. The dawn broke in a marbled swirl of pink and gold, spilling over the quiet town and the towering silhouette of the lighthouse. Lena stood atop the weathered stone steps, her figure poised against the awakening sky, clutching the crumpled confession that had once haunted her, now her shield and salvation. The salty tang of the sea hung heavy in the air, yet there was a softness in the breeze, the kind that whispered of endings and new beginnings. Beneath her fingertips, the letter trembled, soaked with tears and age, yet radiating a fierce, unbreakable light, a mirror of her own rising strength. The lighthouse's beacon, previously a lonely sentinel in storms of doubt, now shone brightly, slicing through the dawn's mist like a sword of truth and hope. The shadows of her past and those unspoken secrets she uncovered swirled around her, dissolving into the bright promise of reconciliation. The weight of betrayal, despair, and silence was lifting, replaced by a quiet resolve to forge her own story, rooted in the truths her ancestors once dared to whisper. She looked out over the vast ocean, the waves shimmering in the morning light like a chorus of unspoken stories waiting to be told. Her eyes, once clouded with uncertainty, now gleamed with purpose. The lock, their ancestral talisman, was now safely tucked away in her pocket, its spirit forever entwined with her own. A gentle hand brushed her shoulder, a quiet, steady presence, someone who believed in her, symbolized by the distant lighthouse still burning bright. Her breath steadied, and she turned slowly, a faint, knowing smile forming as she gazed into the future, open, unguarded, and unafraid. The camera pulled back, capturing her silhouette against the vast, glowing horizon. The lighthouse's beam continued its unwavering sweep, a silent roar of victory over darkness, solitude, and silence. Lena remained standing there, calm, fierce, and finally free, embodying the quiet revolution of the soul that refused to be silenced. The scene held on her figure, a beacon of resilience, before fading into the luminous promise of a dawn not just outside, but within. The dawn's first light poured soft and golden over the gentle waves washing against the rocky coastline. Lena stood atop the lighthouse's weathered balcony, her figure tranquil against the expansive ocean stretched out before her. Her hands carefully held the crinkled letter, the cornerstone of her journey, both painful and profound. The sea breeze whispered through her curls, carrying a scent of salt and rebirth. In her eyes flickered a quiet realization, an awakening that was slow but unmistakable. The turbulent storm inside had subsided, replaced by a gentle sense of acceptance, a silent acknowledgement of her resilience, her truth. The lighthouse's beam, once a distant symbol of lonely guidance, now shone around her like a beacon of healing, illuminating the path she had reclaimed. Her fingers brushed the worn fabric of her vintage coat, smoothing out the creases, as if smoothing out the scars of the past. The locket, now resting against her heart, felt lighter, its weight transformed from burden to blessing. Its silent eye watched over her, no longer a symbol of secrecy but of connection, of lineage woven through blood and time. The ocean before her shimmered with a vitality she had almost forgotten, the distant horizon tinged with the pastel glow of dawn, promising hope. She breathed deeply, the cool air filling her lungs, filling her with the truth she'd long denied but finally embraced. Behind her, the lighthouse stood silent and steadfast, a witness to her evolution. Its shadow stretched across the rocky ledge, merging seamlessly into the new day and new stories ready to be written. The scene lingered, capturing her silhouette, the quiet strength, the depth of her awakening, her story finally unfolding from shadow into light. She looked out over the water one last moment before slowly turning, her steps unhurried and peaceful. The camera pulled back to reveal her figure framed against the ocean's vastness and the rising sun, a symbol of her journey's culmination, a quiet but powerful testament to hope, to truth, and to the unbreakable human spirit. The first rays of dawn stretched across the horizon, spilling golden light over the rocky coastline and illuminating the lighthouse in a brilliant, AWE-inspiring glow. Lena stood atop the balcony, her silhouette framed against the expansive sea and the awakening sky. Clutched tightly in her hands was the faded, weathered letter, the culmination of her journey, a testament to her unraveling of concealed truths. The ocean shimmered beneath a canvas of soft pinks and deep blues, gentle waves whispering and swirling in silent harmony. The lighthouse's beam, once a lonely sentinel shrouded in darkness, now radiated outward with renewed strength, symbolic of her own transformation, her reclamation of voice and story. Her eyes, luminous with quiet resolve, scanned the vast horizon. She saw the past not as a chain of darkness or betrayal but as a foundation, roots that held her in place and branch points that led her forward. Her gaze softened, and a delicate smile crept across her face, not from triumph but from peace. She had embraced her history, her strength, and her purpose. Her fingers brushed the paper gently, tracing the ink that had once symbolized secrets, now illuminated with understanding. Her breath steadied, heart aching with a mixture of reverence and liberation. The storm of doubt that had plagued her, fears of failure, of concealment, of insignificance, had finally dissolved into a heartfelt acceptance. The wind, steady and tender, carried away the heavy remnants of her past burdens. The lighthouse's powerful beam swept the sea, illuminating her path, a guiding light, not to distances she feared but toward integrity and self-discovery. She took a step back, her figure serene and unshakable, gazing into the vast, beautiful unknown. A silent vow blossomed within her, an unspoken promise to protect her truth, honor her lineage, and share her voice with the world. The camera retreated slowly, framing her against the glowing dawn and the infinite ocean beyond, a symbol of hope, reconciliation, and renewal. The scene lingered, capturing the quiet joy of acceptance, the gentle affirmation that she was finally home, at peace with herself and her story. The lighthouse stood tranquil against the quiet vastness of the ocean, bathed in the tender glow of twilight. Lena ascended the spiral staircase, each step a gentle echo of the journey she had begun, a journey through darkness, truth, and ultimately, peace. At the balcony, she paused, the salty breeze caressing her face, tousling her curls as she gazed out over the endless horizon. In her hands, the letter, the last piece of her lineage, shimmered softly in the fading light. Its ink was fading, yet within its delicate fibers lay a lifetime of secrets, inherited hopes, and the unbreakable thread connecting her to generations long gone. Her eyes shimmered with quiet tears, not of sorrow but of profound reconciliation. The sea stretched boundlessly, a mirror for her soul, vast, tumultuous, yet undeniably beautiful. Time seemed suspended, a moment of perfect stillness where past and present intertwined like the gentle waves lapping against the rocks. Her fingers lingered on the letter, feeling the textured paper beneath her fingertips, a tactile reminder of her awakening. The lighthouse's beam sliced through the dusk, a steady guardian that had endured storms of doubt and despair, now shining as a symbol of resilience and serenity. In the silence, a whisper drifted, soft and unassuming, that held no threat but everything of significance. "You are home." Lena closed her eyes, breath slow and deliberate. Her heart, once battered by betrayal and shadows, now beat with gentle strength, a rhythm aligned with the ocean's timeless lullaby. She stepped back from the balcony, her silhouette bathed in the warm glow, a figure at peace with her legacy and herself. This was her dawn, her quiet victory sealed within the luminous embrace of the horizon. As she turned to descend, Her eyes briefly rested on the lighthouse, its silhouette a steadfast guardian of secrets and truths. Light and darkness, loss and discovery, had woven into her story. Now, she was finally free to write the next chapter. The camera lingered on her form, a graceful testament to resilience against the backdrop of the endless, shimmering sea. Slowly, the scene faded into a silent, poignant tableau. A lighthouse standing tall in the fading dusk, a quiet symbol of enduring hope and silent peace. Have you ever felt connected to something you can't explain? Share your experience.